Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Wednesday. It's August 16th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and not a lot of trades today. This was I mean, you know, when you got the stuff coming out at 1 o'clock here, I went ahead and marked a couple of trades, but you really got to be flat. So really, you can see this going right into the news, and then we had just a little. I mean, there's not really any volatility here. You might have wanted to short this. Um, we had a close outside this channel coming down, and you had to figure the target was probably the lower side of, uh, the low side of the price action for the overnight, and so you were looking for it to probably come down and make a new low. So you might have went short in here. I marked it, but really anything from about noon onward till the volatility settles down. I mean, that's not real volatile, but you just need to be careful in there. I'm going to go ahead and mark it. That's when the FOMC news came out. So, and you can see that's pretty typical of what you'll see going into it, because everybody gets nervous and everybody just sits tight and waits for something to happen. So you might have shorted this. It didn't really, that's not real volatile. There was, we jumped up a little bit, kind of went down and up, and then we had the, but notice the price action still fell. We were in that trading range. It fell out the bottom, fell out the top, and then it went lower, which is the direction you would expect because we traded down into that. So you'd figure we're probably headed to the other side of the range, or we're at least trying to make a new low on this little small channel here. You got a channel that was working up here, you got a break and it moves to a new high. I was looking early on, I was looking at a little shorter term one here, but this is more sideways and you really don't need anything up and down in here. I put them on here just to show them. You might have had these first couple but once you've got a double top here and a double bottom, I'm sorry, down here, then you got to play it as a range. So you really don't need that. You really don't need this channel, although it does give you, this trend line does give you the third touch and the confirmation, but you don't want to go long right into that. Look at all that resistance across there. At that point, that's the high, right into the highs of the day. And so that really rules out that trade. And so if you're, you might have traded this as a failed break higher, but out of this range, but you never really got a lower high either. First lower high you got was here. Notice your high, and you got a lower one here. That's the first time. And you might consider a long here, but if you draw your little trend line coming down, it's your first entry. You actually do get a close outside that went higher and then turns and goes down and comes back up. But that's not easy to see. And it still makes you question if it's correct, but I believe it is. If you look at the other side of that, you can see that's a nice tight little channel working out there, and we actually get a close outside right here. We turn up and we go down and make a new low and then bounce. So if you saw that, which I'm guessing most people didn't, then I'd be okay with you entering there. So but yeah, that's the kind of a few of the nuances of the day. If you looked at it shouldn't have been that hard to find this midline right once we started going across here. You could see how many times we bounced. That was kind of, I had it actually there originally. And there's not much difference between there and here, but notice how we were closing and we were touching both sides here and here. And so once that happened, once we did start going lower, if you just measured this down, that would put you right in here to the lows, depending on where you had your upper line. You can kind of see we're closing on both sides where I have it right there. That's why I picked that spot. You might have just moved it up to the top, but you only have that one touch there. And in the end, later as the day went on, you can see that's the right place. But the reason I like that is because it was a double top there. And but notice we got a pretty much of an equal overshoot on both sides, and there's no doubt that's the midline. You can see we're playing both sides of that line pretty much all day. So once we headed lower, I would have just looked in this within this point range right here for your target, and I always play mine a couple of ticks ahead in case it doesn't get there, in case it bounces early or something, and that does happen. So, but let's talk about the trades. When I came in, we'd had this little channel coming up. We had a break. We tried to go higher once. You get a second entry here. Not a great signal bar. So I'd probably wait and see if we try to go lower one more time, which we did. But by that time, you can see that we're in a range because now you've got your double bottom and you got your double top. And if you did go long right here or here, nothing you can do but exit or let it stop you out. You know, I hate to tell people I always tell people don't monkey with your trades. Put your stop where it goes and leave it, because you'd be surprised how many times you'll let it shake you out and then you'll be wrong. But if you're reading it pretty well, and you know, it's not surprising that we didn't go much higher here and pulled back, but it's very surprising that the next time we went higher we didn't, because now it looks like a range. It's tempting to go short here. This looks very similar to yesterday, except we're at the highs, where yesterday we were just we're right in the middle after we were coming down, and so you expect the next leg to be down. So you're looking for shorts here, not longs. And then on this case, we traded up into this one, so you're really leaning towards the long side versus the short. So hope that makes sense. When you trade up in or down into a range, generally it's going to fail out one or both sides, but when it continues on, it will probably go in the direction of the way we traded into that range, and we traded up into this range. So that would give that trade a little more credence, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not risking that long into all that resistance right there. It's too easy to get burned. You're better off just to skip it. I did like this one because it's your failed break lower, and now you got room to get out before here in case that's as far as you get. But you may catch that important low, and you may get a measured move up. And you see I measured that, drug this over, and we didn't get there. So that's telling you something as well. So that tells you we're probably going to sell off a little bit harder to the downside. And so there comes that second leg. It still couldn't get outside the overnight lows, but you did get another leg down. It's not a measured move, but if you used your range to look for your measured move, like I said, you were better off. You would have had a perfect measured move. Actually, you went one tick further than that. But yeah, I just don't think it's worth risking. Again, we talked about this one already. Maybe if you saw that little zigzag right there that it gives you a close outside, a move higher, a move lower, and then back up, and so you could have gone long above that. That's really your signal bar right there. It's actually one tick lower than that one. I wouldn't have risked it above that one, and this one's still questionable. So I mean, that's not a textbook second entry, but it's still a close outside a new low and a bounce. It's not a second entry at all, actually. So and then, of course, you're moving up. You get a close outside a new high. You're not that far away from the EMA. You've only got a double top here, so, and your target's up here. So I think that's too risky. You need to make sure that we're going the other direction. And look how we shoot right through the EMA. No resistance there at all. Pulls back, retest it, finds that trend line. Goes higher, actually turns and goes out the other side, gives you a bearish bar. You got plenty of room to get out. Hopefully you're coming all the way down to here, but at the very least, maybe the midline. So I like going short there. You get your reversal pattern here that fails. It's the third touch of the trend line. It's a failed second entry long. So it doesn't really matter. The only question is it in the middle of the range? But this trend line's, you can see it's perfect. It's perfectly in play. It's fitting nicely on both sides. I think that is worth risking. I really thought we'd go all the way on down to the lows. but we just kind of got stuck sideways. So you would have gotten out of this one right into the 12 o'clock hour. Um, if by 12:30, 12:45 you were stuck in this right here, I would exit before the news came out, because you don't want to take a chance of this thing going the opposite direction you're in and costing you some money. And you can see if you had your stop too close, you get stopped out as well. So even though you got time, you probably could enter here. You got to be real careful about staying in much past 12:45, 12:30, 12:45. So, but it wouldn't have mattered. You'd have been out in time before. And then, like I said, this is during the news hour. I probably wouldn't trade it, but it's a failed break out of this trading range, and things are, you can see the bars are not that big. They're not forming that fast. Um, so there's not a lot of volatility. You might, and even when there is a lot of volatility, the price action is usually still right. So, I mean, we've shown that over and over and over. So I wouldn't be afraid to maybe take that short, although I'm going to still circle that as being news hour time and probably just holding tight. But if you did take it, really you could have entered on either one of those. But this is technically a lower high. Notice that high, and then we move down and we move back up, and then you get that bearish bar. So that's really kind of a lower high right there. It's not textbook. If you went to a little smaller chart, you would see it though. So you might consider that one. And then you get a higher low here. Only problem is it's just a double bottom right there, and it was a measured move, so that's another clue that, hey, we may go higher. There's not a lot of room back to the EMA, but I still like that one. I don't like it enough to make it blue. I think it's still a little aggressive. If we were further away from the EMA, or just had made a double test of this level here, maybe. I mean, that's close enough to call that a double test, because you can see that low is kind of convoluted there. The low is right in that area, and we did really come down right in that area. So, but we didn't test the actual low. So that makes it a little bit questionable to me. But if you saw the range like this and you had your measured move down, then that's another clue that, hey, maybe that's why we're bouncing here. And then your test, if we'd have got one more test, I'd probably made it blue inside the before 2 o'clock. I probably would have made it blue, but then that we bounced. And if you did enter here, you got to figure your first target's the EMA, and then your second target would be here. And if we continued on, it'd be this target up here. But as you can see, we never could get back through that midline. We just chopped sideways there. So not a lot going on today. You got that was an important low at that point. This was an important high. This was an important high. And this was another important low. So, yeah, probably a fairly uneventful FOMC day, I would call it, because, we didn't get any, we went flat maybe an hour before, and we didn't get any real volatility out of it. I mean, I guess that does look volatile compared to that or this, but that's not saying much. So we'll see what tomorrow brings as we wrap our week up. If you didn't find many trades today, there aren't a lot. So don't beat yourself up over it. And I want to reiterate this again. I had this conversation with another trader. I can't remember if I said this lately, but when you get in little areas like this, as I said earlier, you're expecting prices to go higher here, but that doesn't mean they will. It's not 100%. So whenever you get in an area, this is where most people make mistakes and where most people lose money day trading. When you're not 100% sure where prices are headed, the best trade is no trade. Sitting and being patient. And look, you had if you came in at 7 like me, you had to sit here till 8:40, 8:35, 8:40 before you had your first trade. That's hard to do. And then you had to sit and wait. Really, you really need to wait all the way till noon after that trade. So there's you another, couple of 3 hours you had to sit and do nothing. And that's hard to do. And that's why most traders fail, because they'll start trying to force a trade and they'll screw up, and they'll lose money. If you'd gotten short here, if you got short right here, if you're trying to pick a top, um, you had a little overshoot. If you tried to get short, you got burned. Of course, the next one worked, and that's what happens. This one looks like, hey, we got a little overshoot. Uh, we got a, we've had a, we're probably going to get a failed break higher, and notice that's a new low, lower than that one. So there's your first entry. So there's two measured legs there with a second entry, and it breaks lower, traps a few people, goes higher, stops them out, and then goes exactly where you thought it was going to go. And so that's just a lack of being impatient, because you didn't let it play out. And but finally you get a break of this channel and a move to a new high, and then it plays out and it turns down. So it would have been tempting maybe to go short right there. It never broke lower, so you're okay there. The first time it does go lower, notice we actually go sideways there. You can consider that really a double top. So that's a little failed breakout. But it's not far enough away for the EMA for my liking. And even though it's a fairly bearish bar, this is really the signal bar here, and it's not a very good one. So, and by the time you get your lower high, we've already moved way down here. So, but I like that setup right there. It just shot right through the EMA, pulls back, and you figure it's going at least here, and maybe it's going here. And so that's an easy trade down, bounces. This one I almost want to make green, but I'm gonna leave it red. It's a failed second entry long, fairly. If what you could have done is let it break below this bar, although it would have come back and filled you back at the same spot where you would have originally gotten, and then it went back down again. So you could have played it that way and gotten out, but that's getting too close to 1230. So if you didn't enter here, you couldn't enter this trade, and you could really argue for that to be green, just simply because it's into that midline. And that's where you get more failures than anything. But it didn't bounce very much there at all. And even though we got a little it actually pushed through a few times, and the bounce was not very high. So that's a clue that you may push on down if you take it. But again, you're probably better off just to sit and wait. And so anyway, that's all there was today. I didn't see anything much more. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow to wrap up our week. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.